Hey folks, how's it going? So, this is a book review of Star Wars The Essential Guide to Warfare, and I suppose it's been a long time coming insofar as this book has been out for 8 years. The copy I have is a paperback. I bought it for just under £20 in around 2015, so a while after it had come out. It's fairly substantial as a book. It contains over 200 pages, and what it is a thematic Star Wars reference book. It was written by Jason Fry and Paul Urquhart. Jason Fry is a particularly big Star Wars author, if you haven't come across him. He's written a lot, especially on the Clone Wars. For example, he wrote the Clone Wars episode guide, but more recently he's written a novelisation of The Last Jedi, which I believe came out in 2018. So this book, as I said, came out 8 years ago, so in 2012. That was just before Disney bought Lucasfilm and overhauled the Star Wars canon. So what that means is that most of what's in here is officially classed as legends. So if that doesn't interest you, you probably won't be the biggest fan of this book. But I just make that distinction to be clear. I think ultimately it's Star Wars, so as far as I'm concerned, it's what you make of it, really. So the book itself encompasses all Star Wars media, and that's from comics to video games to novels, including the theatrical films as well. It takes you through the history of warfare in Star Wars, covering every era from the Old Republic to the Yuuzhan Vong invasion well after the Battle of Endor. I found it very hard, really, to notice any major flaws with this book, and overall I think it's absolutely fantastic. So here's a few reasons why, and I'll come back to what I think of the book at the very end. So firstly, the book's just full of loads of beautiful artwork. It contains many images drawn by veteran Star Wars illustrators such as Ian Fullwood, and what I like most about them is that they capture the imagination, and I hope you can get a sense of that from the image that's on the screen now. They're also really varied, so this image that you can see has a very epic scale. You can see rebel soldiers really struggling to hold their position against Imperial AT-ATs, and there's a few TIE bombers flying over there as well. But there's also more intimate pictures, like this one where a boy studies an Imperial propaganda poster. Another key feature of this book that I really enjoyed was what I call first-person accounts, for want of a better term. And these are fiction-based, which is in contrast to the book's informative, fact-based style. And because they're fiction-based, they're in-universe sections which are peppered throughout the book. And many of them are eyewitness accounts. So this one is entitled A Soldier's Story, Death in the Woods. And that's essentially where an Imperial stormtrooper recalls how the Ewoks viciously attacked his unit during the Battle of Endor. So you don't really get a sense of that when you watch, the film Return of the Jedi. But what is clear from reading this is that they're not just teddy bears. Another really important thing was that there's throughout the book, there's mini biographies of key military figures. These are what the authors call war portraits. And some of those portraits are of well-known characters like General Grievous, but they also include biographies of characters we only really see in passing. So, for example, here you can see General Jan Dodonna, who we see in A New Hope, but after that there's not really a big role. There's also ones of Admiral Trench, who we see for the first time in Cat and Mouse in Star Wars The Clone Wars. I especially enjoyed reading about Wolfie Loren, so obviously the Admiral from the Star Wars The Clone Wars TV series, who is a recurring character in that. And we see a lot of him, obviously, but we don't know a lot about him. But though really there's a lot about people in this book, with biographies and accounts that I've already talked about, the book also delves into the more technical side of warfare, with statistics, readouts, even rank guides, like this one for the Imperial Navy. The book also profiles ships, such as the Malevolence, which has a crucial role in the beginning of Season 1 of the Clone Wars, as well as manufacturers. So shown here is the Carillion Engineering Corporation, which famously is the manufacturer that made the Millennium Falcon. So there's also plenty of armoury and sensory profiles. You can see a few here. There's one just there of an AT-AT and an AT-ST. Just there as well, there's an armoury and sensor profile on the Jedi Cruiser and Jedi Starfighters, although obviously in this case armoury is spelt incorrectly. On another note, at the beginning of every chapter there are also quotes, which isn't a massive thing, but I think it's just really a nice touch that adds a bit of depth to the book. So finally, I want to talk about maps. I like maps generally, and the maps in this book are really what I absolutely loved about it. So in this instance, they chart battles and campaigns, like the Empire's reconquest of the Rim, which you can see here, which takes place chronologically between the ending of Revenge of the Sith and the start of A New Hope. I enjoy anything with detail, and there was lots of that in these maps. You know, they cover things like troop movements. There's usually a key to go with them, so you know exactly what you're looking at. But it's not just battles that these maps cover. So here you can see a map of major shipyards during the Imperial era, and again there's a key there, so you can see the red and the yellow and the green shipyards all denote slightly different things. So maps like these, if you don't know, were first drawn for the Essential Atlas, another Star Wars book written partly by Jason Fry but also co-authored with Daniel Wallace, and that came out in 2009, so that was 3 years earlier than the publication of this book. So in this book, obviously the maps are more focused on warfare, and they build on the tradition established in the Essential Atlas quite substantially. So in terms of a final judgment, this is a review after all, and I've taken you through some of my favourite parts of this book that make it such a great read. Ultimately, I think this book is so detailed and so in-depth that it might be a bit much for obviously the casual Star Wars fan, but it's for those exact same reasons that it is such a good book for the more avid enthusiasts like me. It's the blend of fact and fiction that really make this such a compelling read, which is a combination of informative writing and first-person accounts, as we've seen. If you're into the warfare and the history side of Star Wars, this is definitely a book I'm sure you would enjoy, and I would thoroughly recommend it. So that's it from me, General Finnobi, out.